Okay, I think this time are we actually live? Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. Happy New Year. Having all the technical, okay, we are actually live now. If you saw me before, I don't think it actually played. We went live for a couple minutes and I don't think it actually went live. So now we've got Facebook working. It is 2024. Like, what in the actual, it feels so funny to say 2024 to me because I still remember when I was in high school and we were coming up on 2020 and that seemed like, oh my gosh, is that going to be the end of the world? Like, what's going to happen? And now we're in 2024, which is not 2020. Yeah, when we were coming up to 2000. Sorry, if I was in high school in 2020, that would make me much younger than I am. When it was 1999, we were coming up in the year 2000. That just seemed like mind-boggling, like everything was going to like not work. And here we are, 2024. So very excited. I am so here for the new year. I'm not necessarily one who puts a lot of emphasis on the new year in terms of, I mean, I think we can make decisions and intentions any time of the year, but I do love me some New Year energy and magic. I think it's such a great time to reset, to reflect back, to look forward. I've been doing all of the fun reflections and I personally love the energy of it and I'm looking forward to diving into some things with you. So we've got all sorts of fun announcements before we dig into our conversation today. I'm going to see if I can see this in the group because I know sometimes I don't see all your comments otherwise, though I saw them last time. But I would love to hear from you all if you're coming back to work today, if you were working over the holidays, how your holiday was. There, I can see myself. Great. So we're actually live. If you had a good holiday, I had a beautiful time. I went upstate. I live in New York City. I went upstate and spent it with about 30 of my family members. And it was actually really, really lovely. We have a whole big like 3-day Christmas traditions and like all of the things we do and multiple dinners and all the gift giving, but we also have a 5K family race the day after Christmas. It was very fun and got to hang with my brother and meet his fiance, which was lovely. And then came back to the city and had a couple quiet days here and had more of a mellow New Year's. Got to see a movie and chill and had a nice dinner at one of my favorite spots with my husband, and we rang in the new year at home after we had a nice meal out. So got a little bit of both, lots of people and parties and also some quiet time, and was reflecting I think on Instagram this morning. It's such a great holiday, and I'm also so grateful that I have a business that I love so much. I was really excited to come back to work today to see my clients and to get to have our calls and to get to hang with you all today. So feeling that gratitude for both the time off and a business that allows that and allows for the resources to do so, but also for a business that I'm excited to come back to. And I can't wait to bring in 2024 and see what this brings for all of us. I think it's going to be a really great year. I think it's going to be a very interesting year after last year in the online space. I think last year was such a we've talked about this in so many different ways, but between the economy and the contraction in the personal development space and with how much the online space blew up after COVID, I think last year was such a kind of a resettling of our space. And I think this year is going to feel, I'm excited for it. I think that resettling did a lot of needed and good things for hopefully all of us, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that brings this year in terms of how we're all showing up and innovation and new offers and new things. So that's what I'm looking forward to this year. Let's see here. Now, before we dive in, so today we're going to talk about the millionaire mindset I'm focusing on in 2024. Spoiler alert, I actually have 11 for you because it's a good number, but that's what came up for me. And then we'll dig into a couple specifically, but a couple announcements for you. First, we are going to be changing our live stream time in 2 weeks. So the week of January 15th, we're going to move our live streams to Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, which is 10 p.m. Pacific. So that will be Wednesday, January 17th. If you're on my email list, you'll get a notification. If you're here, we'll make sure you have a notification. I'll remind you leading up to that, but we are changing. I've been doing a live stream on Tuesday for years. Before that, it was Monday, but we've been doing the same time for years, and we are switching that up. Full transparency, if this is helpful for anyone to hear, and to give anyone permission that you're allowed to change things in your business. I'm in a mastermind, like a type group, and our time got switched up, and I invest in that, and I want to be a part of that, and the time conflicted with our live stream. So the easiest thing to do for me was to move the live stream time. So permission, you're allowed to change things, you're allowed to make things work for you, especially with free content you are sharing. So we'll be changing that up Wednesdays starting January 17th to 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We've got a masterclass coming up at the end of this month, which I will announce the next week or two. So that'll also be held on Wednesday. We'll probably start that a little earlier, so we have time for it because that's usually a little longer. And today, so pivoting now, because it is the new year, I know some of you might not even be be around yet and back into business, but I do want to bribe you for being live. So if you join live, if you're here live and you say hi, we are giving away a copy to my paid workshop, Leverage Your Unique Millionaire Blueprint. So we are talking all about millionaire mindset today. This is your millionaire money blueprint, and we will give away access to one of those. There's both a workshop video and a really in-depth playbook that goes with that. And then, did I have one more announcement? Yes, last announcement, because I know I've been chatting with a few of you in the DMs, and hi, whoever just joined live, be sure to enter for that giveaway. I am booked out for January, but if you are interested in one-on-one coaching support to help you make the reliable and reoccurring revenue you want in your business, whether that's your first and consistent 10K months or growing into 20K, 30K, even 100K months and making that in a way that feels really sustainable and profitable, I am opening up spots beginning in February is when we have our next intensive and one-on-one spot. So we are starting to book for February and March. I will drop a link after this live stream for either a consultation or if you'd rather a free mini coaching session as a chemistry test, I will drop a link for that below. But we are booking out for February and March. So if you're wanting to hit the ground running and wanting that support, I'm excellent at what I do. I've been doing this for almost 8 years. I've helped 15 clients make 6 figures, 3 clients scale to $1 million, 28 clients make 10K months. I'm good at what I do. I would love to support you, but I would book that call sooner rather than later because those spots are filling up. If you want to start in January, I am full. You might be able to convince me to open up a spot, but I am very mindful of not overbooking myself. So that is the announcement for the coaching spots. Okay, let's talk, because I've now just had tech fails and shouted all the announcements, but it's fun to catch up with y'all because we missed the week over the holidays. Let's talk the millionaire mindset I'm focusing on in 2024. I'm bringing into 2024. So yes, I've got 11 of these. I always do some reflections. I'm sure all of you do, but I do quite a big reflection at the end of the year. And on the first, I have like pages of journaling yesterday that I did for the new year. And I always look back on the year and look at, what were some of my biggest growth lessons? What were the mindsets that served me? What were the mindsets I adopted? What also served my clients? What did I see work for them? And then also, what are the mindsets I want to adopt and lean into? Or if I've already leaned into them, what do I want to embody more of in the future year? Because I think so much of yes, I want to have $1 million business. Yes, I want to add X amount of revenue. But I think we sometimes forget that, or sometimes I think at the beginning of the year, we can just get so focused on the outcome goal that we forget about the process goals. And we forget that what allows you to make $1 million per year, what allows you to add 100K to your revenue, what allows you to have your first 6 figures, what allows you to have the consistent 10K, 20K, whatever that is months you want, is a combination of your clarity, mindset, strategy, and action. And it's a big part of who you're being, how you're thinking, how you're showing up as a CEO and embodying that role, your strategy, the action you're taking, right? It is more the process goals. And it really is what I've seen. March 1st will be 8 years for me in business. And I've been coaching for about 10 years because I did a year-long coaching training and coached before I started my business and started charging for coaching. What I've really just seen to be true is your mindset really and truly is, and who you're being and how you're thinking really is what determines your success and the level of success, not only that you're able to create, but that you will allow yourself to receive and to have and to hold. So that's where this conversation comes from. I actually have a post coming out later this week with 11 of the mindsets that I'm leaning into or leaning more into. So what I thought would be fun today, because there are 11 of them, like spoiler alert, 11 is just such a good number, and I don't just have one for you. I thought it would be fun for me to go through these, and I don't think we need to go through all of them in depth. I think some of them are pretty self-explanatory, but a couple of these I'll go into depth a little bit more, and the ones that really jump out to me and have a little bit more nuance around them. And then if you have any questions, throw them at me. If you have reflections, I love, 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 love to hear those from you. And I'd also love to hear, as we're talking through these, which of these you want to embody or take on. And if you have any mindsets that you're either wanting to leave behind in 2023 or that you're really wanting to step into and solidify this year. Okay, so let me pull up my list because there are 11. I don't have them committed to memory. Okay, so the first one here is, this is not a new one, but there's some nuance to this that I just really saw work for me well in 2023. And this is one I have highlighted on my list that is sort of top of my dashboard for 2024. And that's run at your results and be willing to be wrong without making yourself wrong. I think I talked about this on an Instagram, on a bite-sized biz lesson at the end of the year, because it was just really speaking to me. And something I think I've talked quite a bit about is being willing to run at your results, and something I've seen in my own business and I've just seen through my clients who are just willing to run at their business, run at their results. And what I mean by that is who, instead of like second guessing themselves and overthinking and wanting to perfect everything and overwork everything before they take action, who are just really willing to get out there, take action, be perfectly imperfect, be a little messy, kind of bump into things, really run at what they want and to collect data and information along the way, are the clients who usually tend to get the biggest results and get the results the fastest. And there's nothing wrong with not running at results and taking your time and being more thoughtful and a little slower about taking action. But oftentimes when we're doing that, what I find through the clients I support is so much of that is about fear and insecurity and overthinking and perfectionism, and a lot of the things that really do limit your capacity for success. And I know I talk about this all the time, but so much of business really is a test. We're coming up with hypotheses, I can't say words today, and we're making tests and we're getting data and information back. And then as we do, that informs if we're going to keep doing the same thing or to pivot, to adjust, to refine, and to do something else. And so the more you're willing to run at your results, the more you're willing to run at your business and to test your business, the quicker you can get that feedback, that data. It's all feedback and it's all data, and to make any adjustments you need to get those bigger results. So I think I talk about this quite a lot, and I think I've talked about being willing to be rejected and being willing to fail and how important that is for your success. And one of the nuances that really came up for me last year, and I think this is something that I just embodied at a new level, and something I really was just talking with clients about so much, and I really saw the clients who embraced this, how much it supported them, was the second half here. So yes, run at your results, but also being willing to be wrong and not making yourself wrong when you are wrong. And I want to tease that part apart a little bit, because that is, I think that's the difference maker on this one. And so what this means is, yes, being willing to play full out, being willing to go all in, being willing to run at your results, knowing that you can't possibly know the answer in advance. I'm always saying to my clients, if they're like freezing up, I'm like, you just want to know all the answers in advance, and that's just not a thing, and that's what's stalling you out a little bit here. So being willing to not know the answers in advance and to run at your business anyway. But if you don't know the answers in advance, that means that you might be in air quotes wrong. And I don't love the word wrong, because so often what is in air quotes wrong is really just feedback. It's really just information. It just means that a hypothesis of ours wasn't correct, and we just have really great information now. And so I don't love that word in this instance, but I think you know what I mean here. So being willing to run at something and then to get a bunch of information and be like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's not what I thought. Or, oh, that didn't work the way I thought to. Or, oh, that messaging didn't land. Or, oh, that offer didn't connect with people the way I wanted to. Or, oh, that masterclass didn't blow up the way I thought it was. Being willing to be in air quotes wrong without making yourself wrong. And I think if you can take on that mindset, that to me is a millionaire mindset. I've supported 3 clients to $1 million plus, many clients to multi 6 figures and high 6 figures, many more to 6 figures. I am also friends with a lot of peers who are at the $1 million plus mark. And I can tell you, everyone I know who's making $1 million or more has this mindset and has the mindset of being willing to be wrong without making themselves wrong. And I think being able to hold that dichotomy, that is the epitome of a millionaire mindset, of a CEO who is really operating at that level. And because of that, I think that's what allows you to run at results in your business in a different way. So I really invite you. This is one of the ones I think I just embodied at a different level last year, and that I'm really taking into 2024 and holding kind of like, I don't want to put things up on a pedestal, but I'm just holding on the dashboard of, yes, run at my results, yes, run at my business, but really, how can I just be so willing to be open and wrong? Because that also means I'm willing to be right? It's both. But if we're only willing to be right, you can just see how constrictive that is. If I'm only available for things to work, if I'm only available to be right, if I'm only available for success, right, I create a very limited pool of opportunity, and I'm just going to stall myself down, because to guarantee that I'm always right, to guarantee that I'm always going to have success, right? There's so much. That's pretty much impossible, but that limits you in so many ways, which pretty much guarantees you're going to be a failure by default, because you're just not going to take action on enough things, right? So I think you just have to be willing to be wrong to open up the pool of possibility if you also want to be right and have that success. But that not without making yourself wrong thing, to me, is everything. To me, I would how can you make something that is in air quotes wrong, or a failure, or a rejection, or finding out something like didn't work as well, or that didn't land for people, how can you start to see that really neutrally and as simply feedback, as simply data? This is maybe not the best example, but just because it comes to mind, I think about this when I look at the stats on my reels. And when I look at, oh, this reel performed, it's got like 2,000 or 3,000 views. Oh, interesting. This one only got 450 views, whatever that is. And I don't know that that's like wrong, but to me, I look at that as like, oh, that's just such valuable information. Like, this is just such great feedback. Like, why the discrepancy? What's going on here? Why did this land better than this? Like, what did I do right here? Not what did I do wrong here, but just like, what's the information this is giving me about my audience, about my copy, about my, like, what can I just learn from this? And I think that's what we're talking about here. How can you be, in air quotes, wrong? We're using the word wrong very loosely without making yourself wrong. So that's my top one, for probably one of my top ones for 2024. Okay, let's move on to the next one because we do have 11. And I promise I'm not going to go into all of them too in depth, but there are a couple highlighted ones here. So the next one here, I know I've talked about this before, and I'm really seeing how true this mindset is for your scalability and for your ability to, you don't have to want to be a millionaire, but for that millionaire mindset, which is do things that don't scale to scale. So I originally heard this terminology from Rich Litvin, to give credit where credit is due. And this is pretty sure one we've talked about probably every year in some different way. What I really saw last year with all of the changes we talked about, and I just think last year was, again, a reset year in our space in many ways, and in the economy and in our industry, and very, very much needed. What I really saw is the business owners who really leaned into this mindset were the ones who sustained or scaled. And when I look at my clients who scaled last year, I had one client cross the $1 million mark last year. And when I look at clients who added on 30K revenue or 100K revenue, who either sustained or scaled to multi-six or to their first six figures. But since we're talking about scaling in this one, this is one of the things I really saw through every single one of my clients. And when I take a look at, we sustained last year in a year that I think a lot of businesses did not or went out of business, sadly. And I think one of the reasons we sustained and stayed fully booked last year is exactly this concept: do things that don't scale to scale. Now, nuance here. Of course, if you want to scale, there are certain things you can't do not to scale to scale, right? There are certain things you need to have in place if we're going to scale. So of course, I'm not discounting that. The masterclass, spoiler, that we have at the end of the month, we're going to be talking a little bit more about scaling and the components you need to scale. And there are components you need to scale sustainably, and to not just like have a pop month, and to be able to make that month after month. So again, nuance here. I'm not saying that this mindset means, oh, what worked in 2023 and what's working in 2024 is to do nothing that can scale to scale. However, I do see, even in really, really large companies, how big companies, especially as the economy has just been in a funkier place and more challenged place, how companies, and we're talking huge, like billion, $1 trillion companies, I don't know how much money some of these companies have, but not what we're talking about in our online space, how they're even looking for how can we do things not to scale to support sustaining and scaling. And I think that is a lot of the actions that can't be replicated by automations, by AI, by a lack of human touch. And I think that kind of personalization and being willing to do some of those things is what will it's just, I think, a millionaire-minded approach to business. And I think it's a little counterintuitive, because I think we think, oh, millionaire-minded approach to business is like, how can I just make everything scalable and get out of scaling as quickly as possible? But we forget what makes a business grow and scale is, at the end of the day, relationships. And what fosters relationships is not always doing things to scale. And again, nuance. Of course, we have to do some things to scale if you're going to scale. And there's nuance to this. So this is one that I think is just an interesting one to play with, and to take a look at where the opportunities are in your business to do things that don't scale to scale. And just even play with that concept so that you can look at things from a different perspective, and to see what that opens up. And again, to remember the nuance on the other side. And Is there something else I wanted to add to this? I feel like this one's we've talked about this one before, so I don't think I'll go too in depth with that one. But if you have a question around that, let me know. Do I want to share anything else to this? No, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, just because we've got more. But if you have a question, if you're watching the replay and you have a question around this, just let me know. Okay, this one is another one I have highlighted. This one I think is a really important concept, and I think again one that we just really saw highlighted in 2023 that we have the opportunity to take with us into 2024 to set you up for success, and that it's how you show up in a contraction and what you make that contraction mean that determines your expansion. We might have talked about this in the live stream that we had at the end of the year where I was sharing the spoiler alert that we didn't make more in 2023, or maybe it's in an upcoming podcast episode. I think we've talked about this briefly, but this one feels important to highlight. I think this is one that gets really confused and is, I think, such an essential part of thinking like a millionaire-minded CEO. And whether or not you want to make $1 million, that's, again, kind of not the point here, but it's really having that mindset and thinking like a CEO at that level. Something I think is helpful to know, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but it is very normal in nature and in business and in life for there to be both contractions and expansions. And a lot of times when there is a contraction, what follows is an expansion. And when you have an expansion, what follows is a contraction. I think the ocean is a very easy way to look at this, right? We have an ebb and a flow. Tides go in and they go out. And in business, we have the same thing, right? We have contractions and expansions. We have a big pop month, and then oftentimes we'll have a couple months later or a quarter later or a year later, we'll have a contraction because someone's maybe had a big launch and then they're in delivery, or there's many, many reasons for this, right? Because they're scaling, and so there's a expansion in terms of expenses for team and support and ads, or then there's a contraction in your profitability, right? And then after you've poured those resources in, then there's an expansion again, right? These are normal ebbs and flows that we see in nature and in business. I think we did talk about this in the live stream at the end of last year, where I was talking about business revenue, where it's also normal that business revenue is not a straight line. We see this in the stock market, right? We have a big expansion and then it'll tip a little, and ideally we're trending upwards, and that's also normal, right? It's not a straight line. And so I think we understand this concept, and I think it's helpful to understand, because then if you're in a contraction, you can expect expansion to come, but then if you're in an expansion, you're not making it wrong when you have a contraction. And here's the nuance, and here's just what I think is so important. Just because you're in a contraction, that does not mean an expansion is coming, right? We are not actually the ocean. The ocean has ebbs and flows and the tides because of, gosh, I'm going to do like a horrible job with science here, but that is because of what is happening with the gravitational pull and the stars and the moons and how we're rotating the earth. Like, right, there's horrible science explanation here, right? But there are scientific components as to why we have that ebb and flow. In business, yes, I think there's a science to business, but just because you're in a contraction, that does not mean, and therefore, we're then going to have at a certain time tomorrow or next week or next year an expansion. And what I've seen to be true through my business and through my clients' businesses and through peers' businesses, I've been coaching for 10 years. I've been in business for almost 8 years. I have seen a lot of behind the scenes. It's what you make a contraction mean and how you show up in that contraction that determines your expansion in business. Because again, we are not the ocean. It is not like clockwork that at a certain time the tide's going to come in, the tide's going to come out. But it can be like clockwork, right? There is a science to business, but the science for us, what affects that science in your business is what you make the contraction mean and how you show up in that contraction. If you make a contraction, let's say you have a big pop month, and then your next month your income dips and you're in delivery. Let's say you had a bunch of clients pay in full, and then you have to deliver, and so your income dips. And let's say you make that contraction mean you suck, your business sucks, you're in trouble, your strategy doesn't work, you're never going to make more money, your coach sucks. And then you show up either really frantically or not at all, or you just focus on client delivery and not on marketing. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have an expansion. What that could mean is that this contraction could start to be the part of a downward trend. Similarly, if you had, let's say the example we were just talking about earlier, let's just say you're getting ready to scale and you've just put a lot of money into ads and into team and into bringing on support to help make assets for a new program you're having. Let's just use that as an example. And so you're having kind of a contraction in cash flow and in revenue and in profitability. And maybe because of this, you're also not selling as much, right? What you make that mean and how you show up in that contraction is going to determine the expansion. If you see that as like, oh, this is me being a smart business owner, this is a normal contraction, this is all smart shit to do that's going to help me scale, I'm going to double down on this, I'm going to lean into this, I trust this, I'm going to show up fully in this, right? That's going to set you up for an expansion. If you're going into that thinking, expecting this to be your biggest month ever while you're getting your ads going and you're building something on the back end and you're making this mean nothing works, and you're either then maybe not testing your ads or rushing through those ads or hiring poorly or cutting corners or stopping and starting ads because you're all stressed out, right? Like that's not going to set you up for an expansion. So it's what you make the contraction mean and how you show up in that contraction that determines your expansion. It is not just because you have a contraction in business, you're going to have an expansion. However, that is very, very possible. And so this is the mindset I think that changes it all. If you notice yourself in a contraction, that is normal, but how can you really give yourself meaning around that contraction that serves you, that supports you? And then how can you show up in that contraction to support the expansion that you want to have follow? Hopefully that one makes sense, because I think this one it's a really important one. And I think it's also important to normalize, but always want to be mindful when we're normalizing something, that just because a contraction is normal, what we don't want to say is like, and now we just either want to wish for contractions, or that every time we're in a contraction that guarantees success. I think we can sometimes hear things and we almost like pendulum swings from one extreme to the other. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. This next one's really short, but this is definitely a mindset I'm taking in 2024. I think this is one I've just done work around my whole life, and I did work around this last year, and it's so many conversations with clients around this one, that worry and guilt are two useless emotions. I don't know if that's really a mindset or more just a statement. I'm calling this a mindset. I cannot tell you how this is like one where I'm like, I don't even feel like this needs an explanation, but I'm going to give a little explanation here. And I really have just seen through my own success and through, again, clients and peers, how those who are willing to really see that worry, I love how James Wedmore talks about worry as how it's just making a plan for what you don't want to have happen. I think of it as, and maybe he phrases it this way as well, but I think of it as essentially worrying is just manifesting bad shit you don't want to have happen, right? And I think that's just an extrapolation of how James Wedmore explains it. And guilt, I think my coach said this to me once, how guilt is just a useless emotion, but guilt really, like it just doesn't serve anyone. And the reason this is a millionaire mindset or a millionaire minded way of thinking, or a CEO mindset, is not only do these not serve you, but if you indulge worry and if you indulge guilt, and I say indulge very, very intentionally, because these are thought processes and emotions that we indulge. And we indulge because usually there's a secondary gain. There's some sort of payoff. There's something, right, that we get when we scratch that itch, right? When we worry, right? Even though I'm sitting here saying, well, James Wedmore, and I'm saying that this is just creating a plan for what you don't want to have happen, right? It's not very useful. Same with guilt. There's a little bit of an itch we scratch, right? Because we think, but if I just worry about this, maybe that makes me feel safe, even if it's a false sense of safety. Maybe I get attention. Maybe someone comes in to help me out, right? Same with guilt. There's often a secondary gain to that. So when we indulge, and I say that again intentionally, these emotions, what these do is these take you out of thinking like a CEO. These mindsets take you out of being neutral. These mindsets take you out of keeping your eye on the prize, focusing on what you want, being solution oriented, staying focused on belief, being in action, serving, right? It takes you out of everything that moves you forward and sets you up for success. And these become quite sabotaging mindsets and emotions. And I am all for allowing for the full spectrum of emotions. I was just talking about this with a client today, where we were talking about allowing for more anger and the importance of that. And we've done a masterclass on that before. I think every emotion has its purpose, has its place, and we need to allow for the full range of human emotions and to process them. However, worry and guilt, I would say those are the two that there really isn't any benefit to either one of these, and neither worry or guilt is an emotion that needs to be processed. I think there are more emotions that get indulged that are blocking you. It's a blocking emotion, it's a blocking thought that is blocking you from what you actually need to emotion or what you actually want to experience and feel. So I know it's not as easy as just to say don't worry or don't feel guilty in 2024, but that is a mindset I might play with and just look at where are you indulging worry, where are you indulging guilt, and how is it serving you? And obviously it's not consciously serving you, but what is that secondary gain you're getting from this? What is the payoff you're getting from this? And checking in with if that really does serve you, and if you are operating from your higher self, if that language speaks to you, or if you were making $1 million in your business, or if you trusted that you were going to create the success you wanted, if you were showing up as the version of you that's making the money you want to, would you indulge in that worry? Would you indulge in that guilt? What story would you tell yourself instead? What would you be focusing on instead? I think can be an interesting place to play with this. And I'm pretty sure if we think about anyone who's making $1 million plus, if we think about the mindset of a CEO at that level, they're not operating that level and sustaining that level of success by wrapping around the axle of constantly worrying or constantly sitting in guilt. So I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but that's a big one. And again, I will say very few emotions, thoughts are things that we want to leave off the table, but those are two I invite you to just leave behind in 2023. Okay, this one is not one you have not heard before, but I really just saw the reminder of this. I think I wrote a post about this as well in 2023, and this is the mindset I think is, and I'm going to explain the nuance of this because I think it's a very obvious one, but it reminded me of something really important for all of us. So the mindset is, or the reminder here is, you don't get to judge unless you're in the arena and making that call from your own experience, making that judgment from your own experience. And I think there's two pieces of nuance with this. I think as business owners and as CEOs, we get this, right? Like I think it's the Brene Brown quote, like don't judge unless you're in the arena getting your ass kicked. Or don't cheer from the cheap seats or something like that. And she has a great quote around this. And I think we all cognitively understand this concept. And I think it is very easy when you're in business to think you're not judging from the cheap seats. Oh my gosh, be careful, I'm going to start saying cheap shits, but cheap seats. I think it can be very easy because you are taking action and you're putting yourself out there to say you're in the arena and to say you're not judging. However, what I have noticed, and I think this is just a slippery one, it can be a little insidious, is how easy it is to start judging, not necessarily people. I did write a post on this, so I'll explain the nuance here. Not necessarily people, but to start judging business models or strategies or certain ways of showing up or certain ways of operating business that because you don't want to have to do them or for whatever reason as a self-protection mechanism, and how much that can keep you playing small. And what I offer to you and what I'm really embodying, what I really just saw to be true last year, and we'll share that example in a second, is how much that does limit what's available to you, and how when you can allow yourself to drop that judgment, and it's really part of the mindset we were talking about at the beginning of run of those results, but be willing to be wrong without making yourself wrong, which also means be willing to try things and to test things and to not allow yourself to have that opinion until you've actually tried something and tested it. And this is something that's just served me so well in business always. I'm sure, as you all know, maybe you don't know, I have a one-on-one only business model, but the reason I feel so clear on that is I've also allowed myself to test a lot of other models and to put myself in the arena, so to say, and to make my own informed opinion, to say this is great for someone else, plus now I have great insights to coach someone else around this model, but not for me. But I've always played with this, but what I really saw in 2023, we've definitely talked about this, I started playing around with the reels, and I got to tell you, I judged reels so hardcore. I did not judge people making reels. I feel like I'm having deja vu. So I either wrote this in a post or I told you all, when you put out as much content as me, sometimes you can't remember what the heck you've already talked about or not. But I know we've talked about this somewhere. So excuse me for repeating myself, but I never judged people who were making reels. Like, I've always been like, yes, get after it. Like, go for it. Like, you dance and do the thing. But I judged doing them where I was like, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm a serious business coach. Like, I'm like, that's not for me. Like, this is the way we do content. This is the way we do things. And I played around and tested them with them last year, and I just love them so much, and I've had so much fun with them. But it was such a reminder of this mindset, and such a reminder to where I was limiting myself because I was allowing myself to judge something that I hadn't been willing to get in the arena to even test. And look, not that you have to test everything to like, it's fine if you don't want to do reels. That's just an example I'm using. But I had such an opinion around that, and an opinion that really wasn't warranted at all. And it was just such a reminder of this lesson and the importance of, again, don't do all, we're going to talk about this. This is not an invitation to go try all the shit out there. However, I think it is an invitation to remember, if you're going to have judgments around like, well, that's not for me, or that doesn't work for me, or that's not something I do, just to check in with, have you given yourself a chance to be in the arena to test something before having that opinion? Or is that something you've just decided because of what you're judging based on other people's experiences, or because you've tried something once? I think Clubhouse was another good example of that. Clubhouse, I did have an opinion on, but I had an opinion because I let myself go and try it and got really clear that it wasn't for me and why it wasn't for me. And I think that's an example of being willing to get in the arena, and then I could have that informed opinion for myself. Otherwise, it's just not really fair for me to have that opinion. And it's just, we're human. You and I are human. We forget. We're wired for judgment. We're wired to make comparisons. We're wired to do that as a way it's a shortcut in our brain. And so it's just something we have to check ourselves as business owners. But if we're thinking about a millionaire mindset, if we're thinking about being a CEO at that level, this does not mean test everything, but it does mean be mindful of where you're making judgments without first testing, without first having a chance to create some way to discern if that judgment is in fact true. Okay, let's just see. I don't see any questions, but if you have any questions or reflections, please throw them at me. Okay, so the next one here is very self-explanatory, but I think it's an important one. That's ask instead of assume. I think this one came more from lots of people assuming things about me, and it was just a good reminder to me. But I think this is coaching 101. This is sales 101. This is business 101. This is relationships 101. This is conversation 101. This is team 101. Gosh, this is so team 101, right? We're so quick as CEOs to assume a team member screwed something up, or a team member doesn't know something when there's a mistake, as opposed to asking some questions and finding out what's going on. And look, as a millionaire minded CEO, as a CEO at six-figure CEO, right? Whatever that level is for you at the next level. This does not mean that you are a perfect human who never makes mistakes or never has mistakes. However, I do think as you create more success and make more money, I don't just think this, I know this to be true, part of what comes with that is you are holding more, right? You hold more humans, you hold more responsibility, you hold more financial decisions, you hold a larger business. Oftentimes you hold a larger team, right? There's just more that you hold as a human that you have to navigate, that you have to lead around. That is part of creating more success. That is part of scaling. Again, whether that is consistent 10K months, consistent 20K months, or consistent 100K months. And so a lot of the conversations I'm having with clients as they're scaling is, what comes with holding more and having that capacity for that. And it's very tough to hold that much at a high level if you're constantly assuming. And what I just really see is when we're assuming, that's also a form of self-protection, and it is a form of it's a form of limiting yourself, really. And so a lot of these mindsets, what you'll see is they're the opposite of limiting yourself, right? This is an expansion when you allow yourself to ask instead of assume. It's also a form of confidence. It's a form of trust. It's a form of leadership to ask instead of assume. It is definitely a way to communicate more effectively, which is a big part of holding more humans and having more clients and having a bigger and larger team. So ask instead of assume. We could probably have a whole live stream just around the nuances to that, but I think just as a general mindset to take into 2024, because I think that can almost seem so obvious, but so you can understand why this is so tied to your next level success and being able to stretch your capacity for holding more. And even if we're not talking about scaling, again, I think remembering this is also like this, that is the number one sales tip I could give you. If you wanted to know what's the way to sell more in 2024, ask instead of assume, right? Ask more questions, ask better questions. What's the way to self-coach? What's the way to support your clients more? Ask instead of assume. What's the way to support your team more? Ask instead of assume. Okay, that one is pretty self-explanatory. No, there's one more nuance there that comes to mind. I think with that too, because I think part of what's implied with that mindset and why I think this is a part of that millionaire-minded thinking is asking instead of assuming is also a very curious mindset. This goes back to that first mindset of writing out your result and being willing to be wrong without making yourself wrong. If you ask instead of assume, that also means you're willing to not know something, right? You're willing, you have the confidence as a CEO to not have to know all the answers, to not have to always be right. I think it's such a form of confidence and it is such a form of leadership that we don't always realize that is being willing to allow other people to have the answers, whether that's a client you're coaching or someone on your team, and willing to have someone maybe know more than you or for you not to know something. That is such a form of confidence and leadership that I think is sometimes missing in our space. I think sometimes it just seems like, well, the way you show you're an expert, the way you show you're confident, the way you show you're a leader is by acting like you know it all and you have all the answers and you're the smartest person in the room. And like, yes, you need to be an expert in what you do, but oftentimes the smartest person in the room is the person who realizes that they don't know it all and is willing to acknowledge that and to ask some questions and to find out what is true instead of assuming or pretending like they know it all. And again, I think that's such a form of confidence and leadership to come from that place. I've been quoting Adam Grant's book, Think Again a lot. I mentioned it to a couple clients today, but Adam Grant talks about this even in Think Again. And I think it's just a hallmark of a different level of thinking where Think Again in his book, one of the things he talks about is essentially like, yes, having an opinion, but also being willing to think again, to question, to have someone question you or to ask questions to look at and to see maybe there's a different way of thinking. Maybe you were wrong. Maybe there is another option that is true. And to have that ability to think again, to question everything as opposed to just like, now I'm locked in because I am right and I'm the only one who knows the answers and I know everything and I can never ask anything. I'm just assuming this is the way it is because it's the way it's always been. So there's a lot in that one, but I would really play with this one and play with this. And again, not as a way to make yourself wrong, but just notice where are the places you're assuming, where are the places that or where are the places you feel like you have to prove you know everything, where you're not willing to ask, and what would it look like to ask instead of assume? What would it look like to ask instead of prove? What would it look like to ask instead of tell? What would it look like to ask instead of feel like you need to showboat a lot of things? It's an interesting one. Okay, that feels like we got that one complete. And hello, whoever is joining on. You're catching us as we're talking through. I've got 11. I lied. It wasn't just one mindset. We've got 11 mindsets. We're jumping through them. Okay, the next one is really short here that I'm taking into 2024. This is not a new one. This is one I've probably had for as long as I've been in business, and I've actually as long as I've been coaching. So I've been coaching for about 10 years in business. 8 years March, as I keep saying, but it feels like one that just felt so important in 2023 with some of the noise in our industry. And I think one I will probably be speaking to more in 2024, especially as I'm just hitting another year in coaching and in business, because it just feels, this is one that I will get onto a soapbox about, but that is coaching isn't a guruship, it's a partnership and a co-creation. Meaning, if you're hiring a coach or if you are a coach, it's literally what we're talking about, asking instead of assuming. Coaching is not someone has all the answers and someone knows the way and someone has a perfectly laid formula and we give them all our money and give them all our power and just blindly follow them. I think sadly have been, I just watched Twin Flames. I don't know if any of y'all saw it, and it was kind of heartbreaking. And I've seen some other of these docu-series where it's either cults or personal development programs just gone wrong. And it is very heartbreaking to me as someone who just believes in the art and the practice and the craft of coaching, and it's changed my life. I've witnessed it change clients' lives. I believe in it so much. And it is also, like anything, especially when there's money involved, that can be abused. But I think coaching is just one of those ones that can get twisted from what it actually is into things that are a little bit more like a guruship, or I know that's a made up word, or where people pay money and end up giving their power away. So I'll be really brief on this, but in terms of having the mindset of a millionaire and thinking like a CEO, I really invite you, if you are a coach yourself or service provider, or if you're investing in coaching, to really take on that mindset of coaching isn't a guruship. It is a partnership. It is a co-creation. And look for someone who gives you back your power instead of tries to take it away, and notice where you're giving your power away and look for where you can take it back. And really, that is the thinking of a millionaire. Someone, and again, this isn't, you don't have to want to make $1 million, but we're just using that as the lens here. That is that next level CEO thinking of really looking at how can I take my power back, and how can I be in co-creation and partnership with someone. And just literally, we were just talking about how can I see that as a coach myself, I don't have all the answers. I literally don't have all the answers. My clients have all the answers. I'm an expert at what I do. I'm really good at what I do, and I'm great at asking questions and reflections and all of things that are within my job, and I understand business, but I don't have all the answers. I don't know the answers in advance. I don't know what's right for my clients. What's right for one client is going to be very different than what's right for another client. And I think there's a lot in being willing to say that, but look for the people who, like, and remember that the people you're paying also don't have all the answers. You get to trust yourself first and foremost, but it's also I think a beautiful partnership. Just think about like marriage or any kind of partnership, to be in that relationship where it's two individuals who are co-creating and who are both willing to, literally the first mindset we talked about here, it's like run at results and be willing to be wrong without making yourself wrong. When you have two humans who are willing to do that, I think that's where the biggest magic happens. But that means you have to have two individuals who are willing to both be in their power and who are both willing to co-create and be in partnership, instead of someone's up on a pedestal and someone knows all the answers. I think that is where we have that's where we end up with followers and like weird cult behavior instead of like magic that just happens between two individuals. Like I really just see that's where the biggest transformation, but also just the most magic in business happens. In fact, I'll share this really quickly, but I have a client, I love all my clients, but I had a client conversation recently with my clients I adore, and one of the things I challenged her was I literally challenged her to disagree with me more, and not as a way just to be like a contrarian or to like just disagree with me for the sake of disagreeing with me, but she has just had a pattern of working with people where she's been very much encouraged just to sort of like see them as like the teacher and the person who knows best, and just kind of like follow that. And we were really working on her taking her power back and being in her leadership and being in her CEO mindset and really thinking like that millionaire minded CEO. And so what I said, I was like, you can't offend me if you disagree with me. I mean, I might also disagree with you, but like worst case, if you disagree with me, that's going to open up a really powerful conversation for us to see what is true. Maybe it's somewhere in between, but we can't find that. We can't have those potent conversations if you're just yesing me, and I don't want to be your boss. I don't want you to yes me. Like that's not the point of the work, what we're doing together. And it's just been really fun to watch her lean into that. And it's not even like we have these huge disagreements. It's just given her permission to take her power back and to see she gets to yes herself. She doesn't have to yes or to please me. And I think then we really are in that, we were talking about this on our last call. She's like, I just feel like more of an equal in this partnership. And it's just allowing for a really beautiful work. So that is really something I've always believed. But I just think, again, after just so much of what we've seen in our industry, but also just what I've seen in docuseries, it just feels like something that is such an important mindset, but a mindset to remember on both sides, that both as coach, and you might not be a coach yourself, but also if you're hiring and paying a coach, coaching is not a guruship. Like don't pay someone to have them tell you what to do. I don't want to tell people what to do. That's not where it's at. All right. Let's move on to the next one here, which is very simple, but I think always a great mindset and definitely something that I see in my clients who, as they're scaling, really lean into and embody and do work around. And that is, business isn't personal, it's not about you, and it doesn't define you. I think this is one of the it's very simple and very straightforward, but I think this is one of the more challenging ones, especially for my clients as they're starting in business, because I mean, why do we all get it? Most of you in this group, you got into business because you love what you do, and it does feel personal. And you often, let's say you are a coach, right? You probably had some personal transformation yourself that led you to want to be a coach, or you're really invested in your art or your work, right? It often does feel very personal, and and of course, there are elements that are personal. I mean, it is, my relationships with my clients are very personal, so not discounting that, but the more you can see that business itself is not personal and it's really not about you at all, even if it is and it's like serving you in your personal life, the easier it is to be neutral. And when you're neutral and you're not making business personal, the easier it is to show up in your business and to execute, and to the first one we were talking about that I said we probably keep coming back to run at those results and to get something wrong without making yourself wrong, and to show up in a bigger way, and honestly to ask instead of assume, and to have that confidence to not have to know everything, and to be willing to co-create with people instead of feeling like as a coach or as a client you're supposed to have all the answers or yes people, right? That all happens when you're not making business personal. I think I shared this probably on one of our live streams last year. I shared it somewhere, but one of the things I was really reflecting to my coach last year on one of our calls is I've just seen how much over the years I've just embodied being a CEO more. And I just, in some ways, when I'm looking at my business, feel a little bit like a robot. I don't with my clients. I'm a very emotional, caring, loving human being. But I do look at my business really neutrally, and in some ways just like a robot. And how grateful I am for that, because it just allows me to show up and to execute and to do what my business needs instead of taking things on personally. I think it would just be so much more challenging to hold as many clients as I do and to run a business at this level if I was making everything really personal in my business. And I think that is one of the mindsets that has served me so much, and it's not without doing some work around it, but I just really also see it serve my clients when we do the work around that. So business isn't personal, it's not about you, and it doesn't define you. That's almost a whole another mindset there, but we'll leave that just because we have a couple more here that I want to make sure I get to before we close this out. But your business does not define you. That one is one that took me years to really embody as a mindset. I think it's really challenging for those of us who love our work and who get our esteem from our work, and who, I mean, there's multiple reasons for this, but I really want you to hear that one. Your business does not define you. It really and truly doesn't. And the more you can create that separation, the irony is the easier it is to create bigger results that don't define you, but that you obviously want. And the easier it is to then receive, to have, and to hold those results, because you're not making those results mean anything about you. They're simply the results your business are bringing in. You can still be proud of them and grateful for them, but you don't have those results mean anything about you. And you're not making the number of clients you have, how many people you sold into your launch, the amount of money you're making. When you're not making that personal or mean anything about you, it is so much easier to create more of that. Okay, this one is one of the big ones for me in 2024. And this comes from my coach, so Lacey Seitz. A big shout out to Lacey, because I want to always give credit where credit is due. But we had a call where we were talking about being willing to put everything on the table. So I'm willing to put everything on the table is really the mindset. And I started playing with this last year. It has been such a game-changing mindset, and I really see this one as such a millionaire-minded way of thinking, such a CEO-level way of thinking. And I think there's some nuance within this, but I really see how, because I also talk about like pick and stick and do the, pick a strategy and stay with it, and not creating all the offers in the world, how that is true. And so I want you to hear, this does not mean be willing to put everything on the table and then execute on everything and do everything and now have 100 offers and 100 strategies. That's not what this mindset means at all. I still really believe in focus, and ideally pick one strategy and one offer to start with and use that to get to your first 6 figures. Everything we've talked about in this group and on all of our live streams and masterclasses still holds true. So this is not not at all that mindset, but it is the mindset of, especially as you're scaling, or even when you're starting out, to get clear on what you want to do, but I think especially as you're scaling, I think it's very easy for some of us. I think people are different. I have clients who are the opposite, where it's like everything's always on the table. So my job is always to help rein them in and keep them focused. But then I have a gazillion ideas. I probably told you all this. I have in my notes section on my phone, like literally thousands and thousands of notes and lots of ideas all the time. But I'm very good at staying focused and consistent and sticking to things, to the degree that I can then sometimes not allow myself to put anything new on the table. So this is more about being willing to put all the options on the table to look at and to pick up and be like, is this something I want to execute on? Is this something I want to add on? Is this something that makes sense for me? Is this something I want to try and be willing to be wrong at, or be willing to be right at? But is this something I want to consider, as opposed to just deciding this is the way I've always done things, so there's not room for anything new? This is a little bit going back to the concept of being willing to be wrong, right? And not thinking you know everything. There's a lot of commonality or common threads through these, but this is being willing to put everything on the table, not necessarily take action on everything, but giving yourself that opportunity. And because of this is also what it does, and what I've shared with y'all. I'm not ready to share what it is, but because of this concept, what this does is it just allows you to actually look at the opportunities in front of you. When you're not willing to put things on the table, what I realize is you're just not even willing to be open to opportunities and ideas. We literally put a block up to ideas. As soon as I played with this mindset of like, I'm just willing to put everything on the table, it's really fascinating to me. Within a week, I had an idea land of something, and I was like, oh, this is something I want to create for y'all. It's going to take me a hot second to create it for y'all, because I'm fully booked with the one-on-one client, so to be announced in the future, but I've already started on it. And it's something that would have never been on my radar at all before, because it wasn't something I was willing to put on the table. But because everything was on the table, I was able to allow these ideas to flow through. And I had an idea where I was like, oh, and I think it's an idea, as far as I know, I don't think anyone is doing what I'm planning on doing. I think it's something new and something needed and something I'm really excited about. But that came from me willing to put everything on the table. So that's what that means. It does not mean I had a bunch of other ideas that I'm not going to take action on that were great ideas, but they're going to stay on the table. But I'm putting them on the table so I can take a look at them. It's kind of like looking at everything in your closet, being willing to look at what's in the contents of the box. And I don't know if that's the best analogy, but that is what I want to invite you to play with. This is what I'm really, really leaning into this year. Being willing to put everything on the table, not necessarily take action on everything, but really being willing to look at what those opportunities are and to consider them, instead of just saying, well, this is the way I've always done things, there's not room for anything new. And I think that's really important as business owners. I think it is important to be willing to pivot, to adapt, to refine. We talked about this so much last year with messaging, and it's not exactly the same concept, but when we look at companies and when we look at businesses that just aren't willing to put things on the table and just insist on doing things the way they've always done things, those are often the businesses that maybe today won't have a hard time, but they're not adapting and pivoting and innovating, and they often will have challenges over the long term. Just seeing, no, we don't have any comments. Okay, so two last ones here, but that one is probably one of the, I would say probably that is my personal millionaire mindset I'm taking into 2024. All of these are ones that I really saw as valuable in 2023 that I'm still holding on to, but that is probably my top mindset I'm taking into 2024. And I'm also really excited to see what that opens up. Okay, so two last ones here. We'll wrap this up, and I'm gonna have to get better at keeping us within an hour, because when we move to Wednesdays at 1 p.m., I have client calls at 2 p.m. and I have to give a little buffer time to prep for those. So I'm gonna be better about keeping a slightly more concise live stream when we hit the 17th. Okay, so last two mindsets here. One is success comes from a playful and testing approach. Gosh, I think we talked about play a bit last year, so I'll be brief on this one, but I think this is such a mindset that people can lose sight of when they get into business, especially when you're in, I think, the growing phase, where I think when you don't have the confidence and the years of experience in business, it's I think it can get a little into like, what's the right thing to do? Like, I just need to execute, I just need to figure this out. But I think this can also happen when you've been in business for a while and you kind of just get like into the routine of like, it's a little bit of like, this is how we've always done things. I just got to like execute and check these things off a list and get them done and out there. And look, there are times for that in business. I just talked about being a robot sometimes in business. However, what I've just so seen to be true is when we are showing up, like, yes, treat your business like it's not personal, but when it comes to your marketing, when it comes to your sales, when it comes to your delivery, when we are treating that like it is just a checklist item and it's something we have to do, it just falls flat or it doesn't get the same level of results. When I take a look at when I've had results where I'm like, how did that just happen? Or when I look at clients, I'm like, it does not make sense that you're making this much money based on your audience size, right? When I look at that, it's because of the way they're showing up. And it often is because they're playing and they're having fun and they're loving what they're doing so much. And look, not everything always has to be super fun in your business. Of course, there are times we just have to execute. I really want to like not have this become something that we get perfectionistic about. However, if you're feeling like you're not getting the results you want and you feel like you're doing all the things technically right, I'd be curious if you're bringing a playful attitude of fun to your work. Because if you think about the people you're magnetized towards, if you think about the people you want to hire, if you think about the programs you're interested in, if you think about the products that you're interested in buying or the gifts you wanted to buy over the holidays, my guess is you want to hire people, right? If there's 100 people who do the same thing, you're probably pulled towards the people who seem like they love what they're doing and who are having fun and who are enjoying things. If you're looking at products and there's 10 products that are similar, you want the one that feels good, that feels fun, that feels enjoyable, or that seems like the person who's making it or selling it or in the advertisement is playful, having fun, enjoying it, right? That is a very magnetizing energy. And kind of the new one, the like add-on here, because we talked about success comes from a playful and testing approach. I think with this, that is also the mindset and energy that allows you to test in business, right? If we're playful as holding things lightly, and if we think about what we're talking about at the beginning of this conversation in terms of writing out your results and being willing to be wrong without making yourself wrong, and how much of business is you don't know the answers in advance. And it is about having a hypothesis and testing, not throwing shit at the wall, right? We have a hypothesis. If you think about science class, right, you didn't just test things like randomly. You had an educated guess and you tested that and then you got feedback and you continue with that. But the way we do that in business and the way you're able to do that year after year, month after month, year after year, and to create big results and to get the results you want and to even see what kind of test you want to do is to hold your business a little bit more lightly and more playfully and be willing to test. And I think we are playful, and I think our brains almost hear that means like irresponsibly or not having strategy. And that's not at all what I mean. I think you can hold something lightly and have, I mean playful almost in that like childlike wonder and that like not making yourself wrong, what we were talking about at the beginning of the live stream, where you're just willing to test things without taking everything so seriously. And if the test doesn't turn out perfectly the way you want it to, that you're like, well, now I'm going to quit everything and I suck and business is horrible, right? I'm talking more just about that, yeah, that childlike wonder, that just holding things more lightly, that willingness to test something. And if it goes the way you want it to, enjoying that. But if not, still enjoying the process of is probably a better way to describe that, where it's just still enjoyable for you to be in the process of, and knowing that either way you win, right? It's a can't lose mentality. You can't lose if you're enjoying the process and if you're testing, because that means you're getting data and feedback no matter what. It's either feedback that confirms your hypothesis, or you've just sped up your process to getting feedback that tells you something that's going to help you get the result you want. Either way you win. And so I think that mindset of either way I win, but success comes from a playful and testing approach, can serve you so much this year. And then finally, we have definitely talked about this one, and you will definitely hear me talk about this one again. I think I'm actually talking about it on next week's live stream a little bit. I think this one is always true, but particularly with what we saw in the online space with marketing last year, I think this one is especially true, and that is do less better, and to have the mindset of doing less better, and the reminder that means you first have to do less so that you can do better on that less. I think this is one of those mindsets that we get in theory, but I myself have a challenging time with this, and most of my clients are high achievers and driven. And so in theory, they're like, yeah, do less better. And then all they do is put more on their plate. And then you can't do less better. I did a podcast around this, and it was just so funny because I remember where I was like, yeah, this is gonna be the year I do less better. And then I realized halfway through the year I'd added on a second podcast, and I was creating more content. I was doing more things because of what had shifted in our space, and I was taking back more content. I was like, oh, wait a second. I'm just doing more. I don't even know if I'm doing better, but I'm just doing more. For me to actually do less better, I have to streamline. So, and I think this is interesting in contrast to be willing to put everything on the table. And in this way, I almost had to be willing to put some things back on the table. So everything was on the table, but I think being mindful of if we have a buffet and everything is on the table and you don't want to have a stomach ache, that means don't gorge yourself. Don't eat everything on the buffet. It's do less better. Look at that buffet, put everything on the table, but pick the food you really want off the buffet. Don't fill up on the really shitty rolls. Like, get the best food at the buffet that you want. Do less better. Eat the food you really want. I think that analogy works. So do less better, but remembering that means to do less better, you have to first do less. And so again, we're gonna talk about this more in next week's conversation, but I do really see how the way we're consuming content and the content that is converting and working in marketing has just shifted. The online space has evolved and it's just shifted a lot. And we've talked about this in so many different ways. And I do think there is such an opportunity to do less better for us to get bigger results. And again, my invitation to you is knowing that what that means is if you've stacked your plate at the buffet of all the things you could do because you put everything on the table, part of what that means is you've got to be willing to put a couple things back on the table so you can really savor and enjoy what's on your plate. That's what's going to give you the biggest results, in my opinion, always, but particularly in 2024. And that's really the mindset that I think you can play with, the millionaire mindset, the CEO mindset, but a mindset to take into 2024. So put everything on the table. Feel free to put everything on your plate, but then if your plate is starting to look really crowded, I would really invite you to look at what can go back on the table, even if it's yummy and scrummy and so delicious. It's going to give you a stomach ache, right? If you like have too much food and overeat. So what needs to go back so that you can really enjoy, really savor, and in this case, so you can actually do better with and focus, because that is going to be, we'll talk about this more next week. I have my 2024 marketing predictions, but I really see that's going to be the businesses that thrive, the marketing that really pops. What's really going to work is the places people are willing to go in deep and do less better, essentially, because the fluff just isn't going to cut it this year, in my opinion. I don't know a better way to say it. Okay, so those are not the one mindset, but our 11 mindsets, our 11 millionaire mindsets that I'm focusing on, that you can focus on in 2024. I'll give you a quick recap on those, and then I will leave you to your 2024. So again, it's run at your results and be willing to be wrong without making yourself wrong. Do things that don't scale to scale, and that is courtesy of Rich Litvin, originally came from him. How you show up in a contraction and what you make a contraction mean determines your expansion. Worry and guilt are two useless emotions. You don't get to judge unless you're in the arena and making that call from your own experience. Ask instead of assume, and I think that one is a big one. Coaching isn't a guruship, it's a partnership and a co-creation. Business isn't personal, it's not about you, and it doesn't define you. I'm willing to put everything on the table, or be willing to put everything on the table, and that one comes from my coach, Lacey Seitz. Success comes from a playful and testing approach, and do less better, and this means you have to first do less so you can do better with that less. So those are our 11 mindsets. I'd love to hear on the replay or now what jumped out to you, or if you have any other millionaire mindsets that you're embodying that you want to share with us in the comments, please do. And then a reminder, starting the week of January 15th, so that Wednesday, I think it's January 17th, we will be moving to a new live stream time, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And again, if you are listening to this and you are like, I don't want a guruship, I want to be in a coaching relationship with someone who treats it like a partnership, and I'm really ready to step into treating my business like a business and to not making it personal and to learning how to think like a CEO and how to run at my results without making myself wrong. And I really am ready to make 2024 the year that I make my first six figures or my next six figures or my first $1 million. And I want someone who can both support me with the mindset, but also really support me with finding the strategy and learning how to test it, right? Because I don't have all the answers. You have all the answers, but together we can co-create. That's going to help me find the strategy that works for me and for my business to take me to that level so I can not only make that money, but make it in a really reliable way that I can trust, so that I have a strategy I can rinse and repeat, and in a consistent way, and in a way that is sustainable and profitable. That is what I support my clients with. I would love to support you. Again, we are booked for January, but we have openings coming up in February and March for both a coaching intensive or my ongoing 6-month coaching partnership. So I will drop a link below if you want to chat about that. I would love to connect with you. And then I'll be back next week. We'll talk some marketing predictions. Bye, y'all. Lots of love. Happy New Year. So happy to be back with y'all.